Hey guys, Frosty Knives here with another book review, and today, continuing our journey through the Dark Tower, we are reviewing Stephen King's Dark Tower 2, The Drawing of the Three. Obviously the second book in the Dark Tower series, and one of my personal favorites. I enjoyed this book immensely. This book was published in, pardon me for a minute here, 1990? No, 1987. 1987? And it clocks in at 463 pages. So, one of the shorter, as we start getting into the meat of the tales, one of the shorter of the books. And this book takes place predominantly, 90% in our world, New York City specifically. And this is where we get introduced to the main contingent of Roland's party, his quartet, as he calls it. The folks that are going to be following him willingly and unwillingly. He really leaves them no choice to the Dark Tower. And this book, it's a really good read. It's a really easy read. The pace it's paced well. Contrary to a lot of other King books, there's not a lot of bloat. There's not a lot of unnecessary filler in this. There's not. It's very tight. It's done very well. It's crafted very well. The action is awesome. It's very character driven. The characters are awesome. And we really get to see the main, who the main characters that are going to be following Roland for the next 5 or 6 books really are. So, it starts out hours after the Gunslinger ends. Roland's still on the Western Sea. And he's fallen asleep. He wakes up because tide is coming in. And he realizes, first thing that he realizes is his guns are getting wet. So, He as he realizes this, he's also in other dangers. Aside from the water, these creatures, mutant lobsters, some type of mutant lobsters, he calls them lobstrosities, are coming out of the waves at night. They come out at night. And they're coming after him because they're predators. And they're big. They're apparently like the size of like small dogs. So, in the mad scramble for him trying to get out of the way of the water, trying to keep his guns dry, trying to keep his bullets dry, which, most of his bullets wind up getting wetted. He gets attacked by one of the creatures. There's a brief struggle, and the creature bites off 2 fingers on his right hand and his big toe. The toe's not a big deal, but losing the fingers on his right hand basically castrates him as a gunslinger. Now he only has one hand with which to draw with now. So he fights off the creature. He tries to wrap his bloodied hand. He's running low on bullets, running low on water, running low on food. And he starts walking up the beach. And in addition to losing 2 fingers and a toe, he also gets an infection. So now, right off the bat, Roland is weakened. His ammunition is questionable. He's got an infection. He's running a fever. He's running out of food. He's running out of water. Comes to the first door. Finds his door on the beach. It's a door on the beach. Literally, a door on the beach. Think of that, right? A door on the beach. Which, if you walk around the door, it disappears. It's really interesting how he writes this. He gets to the first door, and he opens it up. And the way this works is that when he opens up these doors and he looks through the doors, he's basically looking through the eyes of the people that he's going to jump into. And the first person we see is Eddie. Opens up the door, Eddie's on a plane. And he's running drugs for a mob boss named Balazar. So when Roland finds him, he's on a plane, he's got 2 pounds of cocaine stuffed under his armpits. And, as Roland has to, adjust to all of this. So when Roland goes through the door, his physical body stays in Midworld. His mind, his ka, goes into Eddie. So he gets into Eddie, and Eddie, of course, now he's got this. Eddie's also a junkie. He's a heroin junkie, so he thinks he's just getting the shakes. But Roland's in his head. So Roland finally makes contact with Eddie, tells him he's not going crazy. And he realizes what has to happen, that he has to get through customs. He can't get stopped, because if he gets stopped, then it's shot for Roland. So he tells Eddie, hey, I can help you. So what he winds up doing is, Eddie goes into the bathroom on the plane. Roland draws him into Midworld bodily. They dump the drugs on the beach. And then Eddie goes back into the bathroom on the plane. So when the customs officers break down the door, because they know he has drugs, they figured it out on the flight, he's clean. So Eddie gets grilled for like 2 hours, 3 hours in customs. They can't figure out where he dumped the drugs, but they had to let him go because they have no evidence. So finally, Eddie leaves, and he's, Roland is talking to him in his head, telling him who he is and what he's doing. And then finally, Eddie goes home, and then he gets picked up by Balazar's men, and Balazar brings him to his house, to his apartment, because he figures that Eddie's now a snitch, running a game for the Fed. So they kidnap Eddie's heroin brother, Henry, and they got him as a hostage. And so Eddie finally says, look, I got your drugs. Really, I have them. I brought them to you. All this stuff's going down within like a day. I brought your drugs to you. I'm going to go into your bathroom, and I'm going to come out of your bathroom with your drugs. And of course, Balazar's like, what the fuck are you talking about? You don't have the drugs. Fine, I'll humor you. So Eddie goes in with a bodyguard. And once again, Roland draws him into Midworld, and the bodyguard that Balazar sent in to check on Eddie. The bodyguard gets killed by the lobsters, and Eddie comes back with the drugs. In the process, Henry dies. They keep him he basically overdoses on heroin. He dies because Balazar's goons weren't paying much attention to him. Eddie finds out, and now we've got this big blowout. So they come back with the drugs, and the gunslinger and Eddie, they have this shootout in Balazar's, wipes everybody out. All of Balazar's men, kills Balazar, kills everybody. And Roland says, come on, we got to go back to Midworld. We've done what we need to do. They bring supplies. They found out that they can bring things into Roland's world. So they bring some aspirin. They bring some Keflex, some antibiotics. They bring some food and drink for Roland. They go back to Roland's world. They shut the door, and once you shut the door goes away. Boom, done. Can't open it ever again. So now Eddie's in Midworld. That's how he gets drawn in. So Roland takes his food and his medicine, and he starts to feel a little better. Goes down to the beach to the next door. The next door he opens up is the Lady of Shadows. The first door was the prisoner. The second door was the Lady of Shadows. He opens it up, and this is where we meet Odetta Holmes. Odetta Walker Holmes. And she is in the same New York, but a different time period. She's from the 60s. Eddie's from the 80s. And she is a very rich African-American lady. She's legless because she was pushed in front of a train by someone, and the train cut her legs off right above the knees. And also, she's multiple personality. She has another personality inside her head, Odetta Walker, who's this crazy-ass bitch that just wants to steal and kill people and whatnot. So when Roland first goes into her head, he sees all this stuff going on in her brain. And she just happens to be stealing from Macy's because Odetta is in charge. So when Roland meets her, she's in Macy's taking junk, putting it in her purse. And Roland immediately rolls her right into a dressing room, and he opens up the door and pulls her into Midworld, just like that. Real quick, boom, and she's in the Midworld. But he realizes that there's something wrong in her head, that she's two different people, and he kind of knows how to fix it, but he's not sure because it's all theoretical to Roland. So now we've got Roland, and we've got Eddie, and we've got Susanna. And Eddie and Roland's fever is back, his infection is back, he didn't get enough Keflex to knock it out, and now they start walking again. And because Odetta is in charge, Odetta Walker is in charge, and not Odetta. See, Odetta is the mild-mannered one, Odetta is the savage one. Because Odetta is in charge, they basically have to tie her up into her chair, like tie her and gag her and force her down the beach. So eventually, they keep walking. They can't find the door. They can't find the door. Eventually, Roland can't go on any further. And Eddie goes on alone with her, pushes the wheelchair. He finally finds the door. He leaves Odetta there, just there with a gun and some supplies, dwindling supplies. He takes the wheelchair back to Roland. He puts Roland in the wheelchair and he wheels him to the door. And the final door is called the Pusher. And when Roland opens up the door, he goes into the body of a man named Jack Mort. Mort, which is French for death. So he goes into this guy's body, who is Mort is a very successful CPA, but he's also a fucking psychopath. See, Mort, in a ironic twist of fate, Mort is the same guy that dropped a brick on Odetta's head when she was 5 years old and caused her to have multiple personalities. He's the same guy that pushed Odetta in front of a train and caused her to lose her legs. And he's the same guy that pushed Jake in front of the car that killed him, that sent him to Midworld. So when Roland comes into Mort's head, he's just about to push Jake. And Roland can see it. So he stops Mort from killing Jake, and Jake survives. And then he basically takes full control of Mort's body, and he goes to a gun shop. He takes ammo, and he doesn't steal for any of this stuff. He basically pays for it. He takes 2 guns from this gun shop. He takes as much ammo as he can. He goes to a drugstore. He takes as much Keflex as he can and aspirin for his infection. And by this point, the cops are chasing Jack Mort. They think this crazy fucker has just knocked off a pawn shop, and he's knocked off a drugstore, and they don't know what's going on. And then Mort makes a beeline to the subway station, and the cops are chasing him. And finally, Roland takes Jack Mort's body and jumps it, throws Jack Mort in front of a train. And here's what the interesting thing that happens. He throws Jack Mort in front of a train. And before the train actually hits him, because the train hits and kills Mort, he looks back through the doorway and tells Detta Walker to look through the door. So when Detta looks through the door, she doesn't see Roland. She sees Odetta. And then the 2 personalities come face to face. And that's how they merge. So Roland throws Mort in front of the train. Train creams his ass. Roland goes back through the door and shuts it with all of his ammo and all of his antibiotics. And he was successful in taking Odetta and Detta and merging them into one personality. And at the end, we have Susanna. So now we have Susanna Dean. So at the end of the book, Roland has drawn all of his people. He has Eddie, who's gone through a bad heroin. Basically, Roland made him go cold turkey. Cold turkey. He pulled him in, and he's like, you're not getting any more heroin. You're getting nothing here. And Eddie went cold turkey, which is horrible. So he pulled Eddie. He pulled in Susanna. So the drawing of the 3 kind of means there's 3 people he went into, but he also took the 2 sides of Odetta Holmes and turned her into a 3rd person, Susanna Dean. And then Eddie and Susanna, they wind up becoming an item. So the book ends with all the doors closed. Roland has drawn his quartet. He's got Eddie. He's got Susanna. He's got his antibiotics. He's finally better now. He's healed himself. He's got food. He's got plenty of ammunition that he brought back from our world. The antibiotics have cured him of his infection and his fever and everything. He has to teach himself how to draw with his left hand and how not to use his right hand, which is hard for Roland. And he also has to teach Eddie and Susanna how to fire, how to use guns. But at the end of the book, they're off the beach and they're walking, and he once again he finally has his group. And Roland's feeling a little bit better about himself than he was in the beginning of this book and the last book, because now he's got a group again. Now he's got a group of people he's going to take with him to the tower. Of course, in the back of his head, he's thinking, you're going to kill him, right? You're going to drop him just like you dropped Jake. Whatever it takes to get to your tower, man. And Eddie tells him the same thing. He says, I know you're going to kill us to get to your tower because you're an addict, just like I was. But that's Roland's obsessed quest. And that's where we leave Roland at the end of this book, with his quartet. And he's finally finished off the beach, and he's through the woods. Now he's into the mountains and the woods of Midworld. And now we move on to the third book, which is drawing Dark Tower, The Wastelands. And I love this book. I could read this book alone, because this is a great book to read. Great book to read even if you don't read the Tower stuff. Really well done. Probably my favorite of all of the books, of all of the Dark Tower books. If not, my favorite is at least in my top two. I really like this book. It's a really good book, and it doesn't ever disappoint, and it never gets old. And it's really well written. I would highly recommend taking a peek at this one. Dark Tower, drawing of the 3. And that's what we got. Oh, I got to give it a rating, right? I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 because I really like it. And I think it's really superb. So that's it for this one. And we'll come back next time after I finish reading the third book and my review of Stephen King's Dark Tower 3, The Wastelands. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you are enjoying this journey. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like, and share. And we'll see you again next time.